What's up, guys? This is Andres, and you're listening to the Meaning of Podcast.
This is RB3.
And this is the podcast where we break down your favorite film directors and the deeper meaning within their films. Yeah. And RB3, we're back to doing directors.
Yeah.
We're not talking about no reviews.
No bullshit, no blockbusters.
No future of Hollywood.
Yeah. No more this Spider-Man, Marvel. Get that shit out of here, man. We're back to independent cinema, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. We're doing a great director, a director that has been around for a minute, but still is a director that maybe not a lot of people know about, and that is Mr. Noah Baumbach, the famous Noah Baumbach. We're doing this in honor of the Barbie movie, RB3.
Is that what we're doing this in honor of? Is he directing that?
Yeah.
Is he directing that?
Yeah, he's writing, directing. Him and Greta are... that's the rumor, right? Writing for sure. He's writing the Barbie movie starring Margot Robbie. But the rumor is that they're going to direct as well. They're going to co-direct him and Greta.
Wasn't the big girl supposed to be in it?
That's down.
Who's that? Rebel Wilson?
Yeah, that's not happening. It's Margot Robbie in the leading role.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, he's doing the Barbie movie, man. I mean, apparently that's like the rumor going around.
Congrats.
That he's at least writing it.
He did.
On his IMDb, it just says writing, so.
Writing. I know he also wrote, the great, fantastic Mr. Fox, directed by Wes Anderson.
That's right.
And he also contributed to one of my personal favorite animated film franchises, the Madagascar series, Madagascar 3. I remember seeing that one in theaters. Peeped that one, folks. I
think the one that stands out the most to me, and I guess we can just start with this. What's your favorite Noah Baumbach movie?
Favorite Noah Baumbach movie? So that's complicated because I feel like he makes similar type. They're all very similar type movies. So they all kind of stand as one piece, but they all say very different things and have a variant range of ideas and issues that they tackle. So for me, I mean, I remember when the one that I watched that first moved me was Squid and the Well. That's the one with Jeff Daniels, Jesse Eisenberg. It's like a pretty simple family drama, and I said this to you off the mic, but like what I really like about Noah Baumbach is that he feels like a naturalistic Wes Anderson. You know what I mean? He has a very fluid style. It's not like whereas Wes Anderson has a very expressive style, and he's written movies for Wes Anderson, so they have a very similar type of voice. But whereas Wes Anderson is like full of style and has all of these like weird and crazy ideas, Noah Baumbach is more of a laid back filmmaker, very stripped down visually, just very naturalistic and free flowing. I know he's talked a lot about his influences being like the French New Wave, filmmakers, Jean-Luc Godard and Francis Truffaut, and you kind of see that through like the free flowing camera movements and all that stuff. So he definitely has a lot of that through his films. But that Squid and the Well is up there, Francis Han is up there. The documentary he made, De Palma, is a great documentary.
That's right.
About Brian
it's on
De Palma.
Netflix, right?
Yeah, or I think it's on Hulu, or it's one of those.
I saw it like 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago on Netflix.
I was on Netflix.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Where?
Unless it's a different De Palma documentary, I don't think it is.
It might be. It might be on Amazon. I don't know, but yeah, that's He has a great filmography that I'm a big fan of. So. What's one of your favorites, though, Ace?
I would definitely say Francis Ha is the one that stands out the most to me. And maybe that's because I'm slightly in love with his wife.
Greta Gerwig. Yeah.
I think she's very charming, and I just like her a lot. And I think she stands out the most in that movie. And that's kind of her call to fame, too.
Yeah.
I mean, she's done a ton of stuff before, but that's one of the things that stands out the most.
She did a small movie with the brothers. Oh, man. I forgot the brothers' names, but
the Duffer Brothers?
Not the Duffer Brothers. They were like the indie guys. Anyway, it's gonna come to me eventually.
Yeah.
But Francis Ha is like one of the big calling cards.
It is
that she had, and also it's a black and white film that kind of transcended the black and white status of most movies would have. It actually did. I mean, it was mainly an art house, small independent movie, but even for that standard, it did pretty well. It won a lot of Independent Spirit Awards and all that stuff. So it really was kind of a big spotlight on.
And I feel like Noah Baumbach is the kind of guy who inspires. Obviously, he inspired his current wife, Greta Gerwig, but he has a very inspirational style. The kind of style he has, I feel like a lot of people have kind of mixed with and taken. I forget the name. The one that speaking of Greta Gerwig, the one that was nominated for a ton of awards. Who did that movie? It's the one where it's three daughters, I think.
Three Daughters. I know which one you're talking
20th
about.
Century Woman.
Yeah, 20th Century Woman. Yeah, that's a great film. Yeah.
Directed by Mike Mills.
Yeah.
Has a very it's Noah Baumbach kind of style.
Yeah,
to it.
yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's because I think it's the authenticity. You know, I think Noah Baumbach, if anything, he's a director / writer who goes after authenticity, like realistic relationships, realistic ways that people talk to each other.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mentioned the Nerd Writer video. We have to give him credit because he made a great video talking about Noah Baumbach's super realistic style of dialogue. And obviously he mentions like the famous people for dialogue are like Quentin Tarantino, Aaron Sorkin, but he puts Noah Baumbach up there. He says he's one of the best because it's one of the most realistic styles of dialogue in the sense that people talk over each other, people get off topic, and it all goes back to defining the character and how the way they talk and the words that they choose to communicate is always going back to the character and the relationship between the characters. Like they can be talking about how's their new job, and you could feel like what they're really saying is I'm disappointed in you, but they could just be like, oh, that's cool, well, you know, this and that, and they can kind of get off topic, but they communicate so much by the way they express themselves in their communication.
It's the subtext, you know, it's the subtext under the text. And what a lot of screenwriters do, I mean, the technique that they kind of show you in film school is like, you know, you have a lot of subtext when characters are having conversation, but that subtext should boil up to the text in some kind of way, maybe not directly, maybe not like the character saying exactly how they feel, but an action being taken. Like, you know, the example that I think of most is American Beauty, when they're having like that dinner scene where everybody at the family's having dinner, and they're literally arguing about nothing. I think like passing the peas or whatever, and then Kevin Spacey's character just stands up and starts like smashing plates or whatever, and that's just like an example of how the subtext in the scene boiled up to a point of like externalizing itself. And I think that's what Noah Baumbach is great at doing within the dialogue. A lot of times the conflict that characters are experiencing is coded underneath what they're saying to each other. Like the Meyerowitz story, that's the one that was referred to in the Nerd Writer video. I think Squid in the Well is a great example of that. Like a lot of the conversations that you see between Jeff Daniels and the mother in the movie, I forget exactly her name, the actress's name, but a lot of times the conflicts that they or Laura Linney played. A lot of times the conflicts that they have with each other, you know, they'll argue about like toothpaste or argue about something like so nonsensical, but it was really, you could tell like the strain in their relationship, and you even see, how the boys end up connecting to the dad a lot more because that's who taught them to speak, and that's who taught them like their mannerisms and their way of life, and then the daughter latches on more onto the mother because she's more sympathetic to the mother's perspective in general. I think the movie that Squid in the Well does a great job of opening itself with that scene of just the two sides of the family playing tennis against each other, and then Jeff Daniels' character is like telling Jesse Eisenberg, like, make sure you hit it on your mom's weak side because she doesn't have a good backhand. So he keeps doing that, and then Jeff Daniels keeps doing that, and then eventually the mom catches on and gets really upset because she knows like they're intentionally poking her. I think that opening scene is kind of laid the establishment for what that whole movie was going to be about, is how these two, how the men, or how Jeff Daniels' character antagonizes Laura Linney's character in the same way that Jesse Eisenberg and his girlfriend kind of go through their same relationship roles, because it's like all underlying insecurity, like all masculine underlying insecurity, but they poke weaknesses in their female partner to poke holes in that. So it's very deep. Like I'm always a big fan of like cinema that speaks like outside of what's said. So that's I think Noah Baumbach does that spectacularly.
And I think a lot of it too is the acting, and we have to give credit to the actors, but not just give credit to the actors, but give credit to the writing, because I feel like a lot of the time this generation of actors and this generation of movies, they pay a lot of attention to like improv and the actor could do whatever he wants because the script isn't that great or because they're just going a little bit off the script, not really off the script. I personally feel like people who do Noah Baumbach movies are going all off the script. And the script is just so good that the little details like you talked about, whether it be emotions or mannerisms, come straight from Noah Baumbach. I think he's that good of a director. And I think I've told you before, the biggest example of a great director is the performances he can get out of an actor. Yeah. And the performances he gets out of every single one of his movies are incredible. Like Adam Sandler is amazing. I think
Adam Sandler had a great performance.
Ben Stiller is great.
Yeah, he's a frequent collaborator with Ben Stiller,
and he's great in all of Noah Baumbach's movies.
Yeah, even down to Greenberg. I remember watching Greenberg when I was like kind of younger. It came out in 2010. I couldn't really wrap my hand around that movie, but that's kind of like the Ben Stiller starring kind of role that Noah Baumbach, because a lot of times he plays side characters in his movies, but this was like a starring role that Ben Stiller was in. And that movie's very much about like aging and getting old and like how the repercussions of getting old like really get to somebody's psyche. So I think that's also a commonly addressed kind of issue in a lot of Noah Baumbach movies as well. I think a lot of characters in his movies are older gentlemen.
That's true.
Dealing with aging and the fear of aging. So that's a big part of it. But when I was young, I couldn't really wrap my head around that.
But you see what I'm saying about the emotions that a character feels are on the page.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, or do you feel like I would just love to get my hands on a Noah Baumbach script to confirm my theory?
Yeah.
But obviously I don't have one. But I really do feel like if you've read really good scripts, for example, you've read a lot of scripts, right?
Yeah.
You can see like they tell you exactly what they're feeling. And when you read that as an actor, I'm going to feel exactly what it says on the page. And I think Noah Baumbach is really good at that, at expressing subtext, like you just said.
Well, it really depends. I mean, a lot of screenwriters kind of leave the screenplays empty. But I think for the case of Noah Baumbach, he writes a lot of the stuff he directs. So I'm sure in his writing, he expresses a lot more of what the environment and the tone is like. So I think that is pretty helpful for actors. But I think even within the dialogue, we talk about like the Coen brothers. Like the Coen brothers, there's like for the movie Fargo, there's a lot of ums and ahs like in that movie. And a lot of people thought that was improv, but in the script you could actually read all of those like little hiccups and mistakes. So I think that's also that enhances the characterization of these characters when Noah Baumbach's writing them individually.
Let's name a few directors. You mentioned the Coens that have that same, it's in the script kind of thing. Do you think Tarantino? I think Tarantino is one of those directors who, like, 100%. The actors know exactly what they're getting. Because, I mean, obviously there was that funny quote from, I forget her name, Kevin Smith's daughter. I don't know if you saw that quote that said that I've never worked with a director that tells me exactly, like in all caps, what to do, what to say, and exactly how to do it and how to say it. That's Tarantino in a nutshell.
Was she in
She was in Once Upon a Time, yeah. I'm assuming it's like a small part or something. I haven't seen the movie, full disclosure.
Yeah.
But either way,
that's a lot of small parts in that movie.
Exactly, it's a big cast. But it's an example of a director who pretty much knows this is exactly what we're getting versus a director like a Taika Waititi who a lot of it is improv. Most of his movies are a lot improv. And they do different lines and different reads just on set. And he can just feed you lines or you can feed him lines.
Right.
But I feel like Noah Baumbach is the kind of guy, like you said, like the Coen brothers who are known for putting in little details inside their dialogue to express the character.
Yeah. And going back to that Nerd Writer video, one of the things he points out is just in the characterization of Adam Sandler, because he references one of the scenes where Adam Sandler and Ben Stiller are walking in a hospital together, and you could see very distinctly that Ben Stiller's character is high. He holds his head high. He's very confident. He's very like walking, but he's like kind of hiding his insecurity under him. Whereas Adam Sandler's character kind of outwardly expresses his insecurity and kind of mumbles and it has like this nervous tick a lot. But within he's very confident about what he's saying. So it's great that there's a flip and dynamic to what the characters are doing and what they're actually feeling in the inside. It adds a lot more complexity and layers to the overall piece.
What do you think about the comedy in his movies? Because pretty much all his movies are dramatic in some
dramedies.
way.
I say
dramedy
dramedies.
is always I feel like it's overused a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why I separate the two, because I still feel like they're dramas if I had to pick.
Yeah.
But dramedies is still the word that people like to use. So yeah, dramedy. Right. It's a perfect word for it. What do you think about that? How it kind of meshes between the kind of serious topics they're talking about within the family, but still bringing in the natural comedy that you would get out of a situation where you're having these intense conversations with your family.
Yeah, I think it definitely, again, I think it's funny because it's realistic. I think that's the main reason why people latch on to it like very, very strongly. I think, I think especially with Noah Baumbach films, his characters have a lot of tendencies to be kind of blunt, especially the older characters in the movies. They have a very much natural tendency to just say it how it is. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of it comes off funny. It comes off, but it's also sincere because everybody has those people in their family. But I think comedically, I think dramatically, I think a lot of his films fall on the dramatic side too. I think Francis Ha, when I think of Francis Ha, it's a great comedy and the situations that's happening. But I think at its heart, it's kind of a starchly, I don't want to say depressing story, but it's very much about the mundaneness and like the day-to-day life of somebody who doesn't really know where their life is headed, who doesn't really have a clear ambition, And while the older characters in his movies are usually dealing with like the fear of aging and the fear of like dying, a lot of his younger characters are dealing with the uncertainty of the future.
Speaking of which, let's start with the 1995 film Kicking and Screaming.
Yeah.
Speaking of that uncertainty, that's kind of the topic he tackles inside this movie.
Right.
What stands out to you with Kicking and Screaming? It's his feature debut.
His feature debut, yeah. I mean,
all of his. I just read the runtime, $1:36. It's crazy how like most of his movies are kind of short.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just thinking of Francis Ha is really short.
Right. And Squid in the Well is only $1:20.
That's what I'm saying.
And I think
that's refreshing. RB3.
Yeah, and again, like I think he talks a lot about his influences being like French films. A lot of French films are very short.
That's
like
true.
A lot of them are like 60, 70, 80 minutes, which I think is beautiful. I love to get back to that.
Me too.
To that reality.
I saw Crawl like a week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
and that's another like $1:30.
Yeah,
and I was just like, that's perfect. $1:30.
Yeah.
Give me that.
Yeah, no
that's
more
all I need.
3-hour Avengers movies.
That's what I was saying. 3 hours of making a comeback.
Yeah,
but it's refreshing to watch a movie, and I feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's indie and stuff like that. Where it has to be cheaper.
It has to be cheaper.
That's something that Spike Lee did. A few of his first movies were shorter, on the $1:30 side. I feel.
Yeah.
I might be wrong.
Yeah, She Gotta Have It was pretty short. Squid is pretty short. Do the Right Thing was a little longer. But I think
Malcolm X is like the longest movie ever.
Malcolm X is about 4 hours.
Yeah.
When I have kids one day, there's gonna be a mandatory screening every month for that movie. Yeah. That's my movie, man. Yeah. I was watching that the other day, actually, man.
I'm still so fascinated by, and I'm staying on topic, but I'm still slightly going to the right, off topic, by runtimes and the idea of like, I feel like what's happening now. I just binged The Boys on Amazon using your account.
Hey,
I gotta exploit it, man.
Use it, man. I'm not using it. I haven't seen it.
But it's an 8-hour movie. It's an 8-hour movie. Stranger Things, 8-hour movie, and that's like a TV show, 8 episodes, right? But they're an hour long, 8 hours, and you can flesh out so much more RB3 in a TV show nowadays. Whether it be a Breaking Bad or Sopranos or whatever you want to name that's so character-centered that you can just like squeeze every last bit of character from your main protagonist. And it's really refreshing. And it's interesting to see movies like Malcolm X. It's like so much information. How do you express so much of a character inside a short runtime? As a director, I'll ask you.
Well, I think a lot of people, and I think a lot of filmmakers today really struggle with the idea of brevity. I think that's one of the kind of lost arts that I think is kind of. And I saw a great tweet. I forgot who tweeted it about the Lion King remake. I hate shitting on this movie again, but somebody said it's remarkable how the live action Lion
Oh,
King.
it's 20 minutes longer.
Yeah, is an hour and 56 minutes. It had to cut scenes from the original hour 30 runtime. Like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So it's like that is a problem because I think a lot of times the consensus that comes around is like slower pacing is more dramatic. Slower, it's slower. If you have a slow movie, it's to indicate its importance. And I don't necessarily think that's true. I don't like movies that are slow just for the point of being slow.
Okay. Because I love slow movies, but not for just for the slow.
I think, man. I hate to seem like I'm hating, but I'm going back to Blade Runner 2049. There was one scene in that movie that even as many times as I try to forget this movie today, where Jared Leto was doing something. I forgot what he was doing. He was like putting something into a computer, and we're literally sitting there for 10 minutes, like 10 minutes watching nothing.
Yeah.
Like, come on, that's just being excessive.
But Roma, did you like Roma?
I like Roma a lot.
Slow.
Yeah. I mean, it's slow, but it's not
like it's mundane slow.
But it's like an
where
hour.
She's like cleaning.
Yeah.
And it's just 10 minutes of her cleaning.
Yeah, but it's like,
what's happening?
Well, I feel like Roma is a more nostalgic piece. Sure. That's why I feel like that one is the slowness is to resemble the
and the camera is super
memory.
Slow.
Yeah.
Like it moves like this slow, like centimeters.
Well, it's like 2 hours and 30 minutes, right?
I don't know. I forgot.
But the same thing with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That's another movie. Yeah,
that's a slow movie. I mean, it's very slow. But it's slow because in the same way that Roma is about the nostalgia of childhood and the nostalgia of Alfonso Cuarón's childhood, at least, and like growing up in a maze house. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is very much a nostalgia piece for Tarantino of like that time period. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. One that comes to my head that I love, and I was low-key rewatching the other day, A Ghost Story, a movie you haven't seen yet, right?
Oh, I saw it. We talked about this.
We have talked about it.
Yeah, I saw it at Starbucks, and I can.
That's right. That movie is another movie that's like an hour 30 or something like that, and it's slow.
Yeah, that's an hour 30. You could chop into 30, man. You could chop that into 30.
That could be a 30-minute movie.
Yeah, man.
There's some shots that most shots don't move. Yeah. They're just static shots, and they just sit there, and I love it. I was eating that up, man, just like she ate that pie. But let's get back to Kicking and Screaming. What stands out to you about this movie?
It's just the energy, it's the vibe. I think more than anything, when the director has a vibe, that's really when they latch on. It came out like during a big time in the independent movement, in the 1990s, late 80s through the 90s, mid 90s.
Yeah, especially 90s. For sure.
Yeah, it was a big time where a lot of independent cinema was like breaking out. This obviously came out around the same time as like Clerks. And you see a lot of these type of movies that were coming out of like Sundance. Wes Anderson has his version of this kind of movie. I mean, a lot of filmmakers who Spike Jonze has a version of this, I'm sure. Well, maybe not, because he only has like 8 movies. I don't even think he has 8. He has like 4. But these are very loose, like kind of let's point the camera and let's just have a good time and have a fun time with like these characters, but to also show you the depth of how good they are as either a writer or a director. So this is definitely that time.
It's definitely working with a budget, right?
Yeah,
that's kind of the idea where I can shoot this in an apartment, I can shoot this with a few people.
Yeah,
it's not going to cost too much.
It's like the mumble. I mean, people criticize mumblecore now, but this was like
really
early
people criticize it. I thought people loved it.
I hear people criticizing it.
Do you like mumblecore?
I think it's cool. I mean, it depends on who's doing it.
Yeah.
I think people use it for the wrong things. People call Atlanta mumblecore, and I don't think that's mumblecore.
Oh, I don't think that's mumblecore.
Nah. But people call that mumblecore.
Really?
People call. I feel like people call things mumblecore that isn't mumblecore.
Okay,
but,
I agree.
Yeah, I just don't agree with the placement of the term, but I do like the genre. Yeah.
Would you consider Noah Baumbach mumblecore?
Not necessarily. I mean, I would consider some elements of this kind of that, but I think I think what mumblecore is derived from this. You know what I mean? I think a lot of what mumblecore is in today's context, in like the early 2000s to like today's context, derives from what independent filmmaking was in the 90s.
And just because I'm realizing something, just to clarify for the audiences, people who don't know what mumblecore is, can you quickly give a definition?
Well, it's just the whole idea of mumblecore is just like a movie or a TV show, most likely a movie, about people just doing nothing and just being teenagers and wasting their life and time.
Really, that's your definition. Interesting.
That's what I think a lot of people consider it. Yeah.
Okay.
What would you consider it though? Like,
I'm similar, but not quite as far as like they just do nothing. I feel like it's just centered on dialogue.
Yeah, centered on dialogue.
And centered on like
a day in the life.
Mundane dialogue.
Yeah, a day in the life of
like talking about nothing.
Yeah.
And talking about it in a very like realistic manner.
Yeah. So, or a lot of times it's improv too. That's what I'm trying to think of these fucking guys' names, man.
Damn, bro.
What's the name of that movie with My Name is Jeff? They directed My Name is Jeff. Anyway, I'll get back to it.
Either way, but that's what stands out from Kicking and Screaming.
That's not it. But I
think of 22 Jump Street.
Yeah,
My name is Jeff.
Yeah.
Going to explicit detail. There was Dora.
Yeah.
Diego.
Right. But yeah, that's the beauty. I mean I think what Mumblecore is derives from what independent cinema was in the 90s, and I think Noah Baumbach was influenced by his contemporaries and continued to influence.
Who do you feel like is the creator of that, or the flagship runner?
That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, I think.
Do you feel like it just came in general, like from indie movies?
I think it just came from film school, film school, young 90s.
It came from because I've done a lot of short films. And I've been on sets where it's like this is something where it's like we have no money, let's just shoot a dinner scene. Right. Where people are talking, and that's kind of like we got no money, so that's what we got to do.
I think what inspired people is I think a lot of people saw Reservoir Dogs and was like, oh, this movie.
That's such a good point.
This movie has has one setting. And everybody thought they could do that to some extent.
That's such a good point. That's a good one.
I think Reservoir Dogs and I think Sex, Lies, and Videotapes too from Steven Soderbergh. I think not necessarily like directly. I think more directly Reservoir Dogs. But I think Sex, Lies, and Videotapes because that's the one that kind of put film festivals on the map to allow that to kind of be the culture.
100%. Let's move on to 1997, Mr. Jealousy. Is this a movie you've seen, RB3?
I don't think I've actually seen this one.
I don't think I have either. It looks like interesting. Yeah, this is one I've missed. RB3, full disclosure.
Yeah, I missed this one too. To be fair, this has like only 1,000 people said they watched it on IMDb. So, looks like we're not missing out on much. But I don't think he really had another big one.
Till The Squid and the Whale.
I think, yeah.
That's the next one that comes up on the IMDb is The Squid and the Whale. So let's talk about it, man. What stands out for you from this woman, and what's your connection towards the movie? Because you mentioned you had a connection.
I mean, not necessarily a connection, but I just really enjoy this type of story. I really enjoy family stories. I really enjoy seeing just kind of it feels honest. You know what I mean? It feels like something that he maybe dealt with growing up. Some of the things that in this movie maybe he kind of dealt with personally growing up, or if not, he kind of imagined it, a lot of that growing up. I think the father and son relationship in this movie is very realistic. I think it's very easy for men to kind of be influenced by the male figure in their life, and coming to that realization that male figure might not be the best influence on you, or might not be the best person in general. So I think the movie addresses that really well. I think the movie talks about coming of age pretty well with the youngest brother. There's like this hilarious like masturbation scene that happens like in the locker or something like that. It's just because the movie's about these parents going through a divorce, and how each child is kind of individually coping with that in and of themselves. So I think in that respect, it's very honest and realistic to what
and it's very relatable, right?
Yeah, super relatable.
Everyone has issues with their parents, whether they're getting divorced or not. I mean, divorce in general is incredibly relatable.
Right.
But just the idea that growing up in a household where your parents are separating, or where there tension between your parents is kind of awful. RB3.
I mean, that's
it's kind of bad.
I mean, that's what
it makes you feel like shit when you're a kid.
It make people just do like weird things. Like it'll just make people, it'll really break somebody's heart who's like really attached to their parents.
100%.
So,
and I feel like that's something that a lot of movies tackle. Obviously, this isn't breaking news or anything, but I feel like it's something that American culture, I don't want to say ignores, but I feel like they pay enough attention to it, if that makes sense. They don't really pay enough attention to households and parenting and the kind of stuff that goes down, because there's a lot of tragedy. And by tragedy, I don't mean actual tragedy. I just mean like relationship tragedy when it comes to the parent-son or parent-daughter relationship, mother-daughter, mother-son, whatever it is. So that's an incredibly relatable topic. And the fact that it's very short, the fact that the dialogue is there, the fact that it's Jeff Daniels and Laura Linney, I mean, all that kind of plays hand into the amount of character that you can get within this runtime. Because like I mentioned before, this is a shorter runtime, and yet you can get so much out of these characters. And you mentioned the opening scene. Do you feel like that pretty much establishes it, right?
Yeah, it kind of sets the tone. And it really sets the tone for also how divorced parents have to cope with parenting children while going through a divorce. Because there's a lot of scenes where Jesse Eisenberg is hanging out with Laura Linney's character, hanging out with his mom, or staying with her for that weekend. And he's like very upset, very irritable, like giving her a really hard time because he's mainly living with his dad and is mainly getting that perspective. But then as time builds and as the movie goes on, he starts to see how kind of lackluster his dad really is as a person. So it's a growing, it's about growing, it's about understanding people as you're growing up, and it's about how the influence of your parents kind of leaks down into you, and how you're either going to choose to change or if you're going to buy into that. So,
and I feel like I mentioned before, relationships with parents is something so relatable. Whether you're, everyone has a dad or mom, or everyone has a relationship with a parent.
Right.
So it's something that I feel like every person who watches a movie brings in their own views on relationships with your parents, or in their own parents in general, into each character. At least that's what I do, and I feel like a lot of people do that, where they're like, how would I react to this situation, or if I can relate to that. Maybe that's why I like Lady Bird so much. Even though I'm not a 15-year-old white girl living in Sacramento, I could still low-key kind of relate with Saoirse Ronan's character because of that kind of strain between her and her mother, or even her and her father, where she kind of just ignores her dad, because that's real. I mean, and sometimes dad feels ignored because he's a quieter dude, and that's such a grounded concept to relating to audiences, where audiences can feel like, oh, I don't talk about that, but I can see it on screen. So maybe that's what I got out of it, is like, oh, I have had to deal with that, so I can relate to that as well. And maybe that's just because I have a closer relationship with my parents as well. So that's something that's personal to me, whereas other people might not.
Right, exactly.
As a kid growing in high school, man, it was baffling to me, RB3, maybe because I grew up in a very different household, to say the least, where teenagers, and I feel like obviously a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're teenagers, but they didn't really talk to their parents at all. In all the high school movies too, you kind of see that they don't really talk to their parents at all. Versus me, I always did, and I always felt like kind of weird. I always felt kind of out of place because I was like, I talk to my mom. She's cool. Versus other kids who are like, oh no, I don't talk.
But you're the only child, right?
No, I'm not. Definitely not. No.
No. Well, for me it was different. I was the only child, you gotta hang out with your parents a lot. But yeah, I mean, it depends on the kind of parents, I guess.
Sure.
Depends on how much you like being at home. I definitely think that's a big part of it.
But what I'm trying to say is that's kind of my relationship to this movie is because I got it. I was like, I get that. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Let's move on to one more before we go to break. There's Margot at the wedding, and there's Greenberg. For me, the one that stands out the most is Greenberg. Did you see Margot at the wedding?
I think I saw this a minute ago, but I don't necessarily, not sure if I remember.
Let's jump to Greenberg, starring Ben Stiller. You mentioned that you didn't quite connect to this movie as much as you thought you would.
Yeah, when I was younger, I mean, listen, bro. Whenever when you're a kid and you see a movie on HBO and it's R-rated, you're looking for one thing. All right, so I was looking for.
Damn, bro, really?
Yeah,
I'm looking for a story. I'm kidding.
Man, get out of here. What are you talking about? So I was looking for some titties. Nah, but I think there maybe at one point there was in this film. But
I do the whole I'm looking for hard.
I'm looking for the hard.
Know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know about all that. But
this is
between the titties, it was a pretty compelling story.
Yeah, I mean,
but it was just something I was young. So
this is something that this is Ben Stiller low key flexing his acting muscles, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like before this, Ben Stiller had this is 2010. Before this, we had like what is it called? Meet the Parents.
Yeah.
We had the usual Ben Stiller goofy comedy guy, and I feel like this obviously still has comedic Ben Stiller, but it's in a very different light, if that makes sense. It's not a pure comedy.
Yeah,
if I'm trying to say that.
He, I think this is during the time he also did The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Is that really?
Yeah.
Did that come out? I feel like
2013.
Oh, 2013.
Yeah,
You're right.
But around the time.
Yeah.
You know. But Walter Mitty was a remake of the old.
Yeah, but that's when Ben Stiller was trying to be different and trying to be creative and trying to think outside the box.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I miss that era, man. I haven't seen him in nothing good in a minute. Besides My Irish Story.
He's great, dude. He's such a good actor.
He's great. Yeah, he should act more.
That trailer for Secret Life of Walter Mitty is still like
that trailer's
one
amazing.
of the best indie trailers I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, not indie. It was $100 million budget.
Well,
but yeah, indie.
One of the best like non-Godzilla, non-Superman trailer I've ever seen.
Yeah. But that's another one we gotta get at MGM for, man. MGM remaking another one of the classics.
Yeah.
But Ben Stiller actually directed that one, so salute to him for that.
I think that was his first, right?
It might have been. That's a big first movie. Jesus, I mean,
it's Ben Stiller, man.
A remake of a classic MGM piece.
I know he works on TV now, and I'm sorry, I apologize to everyone because we're getting slightly off topic talking about Ben Stiller.
Oh, he directed Tropic Island.
Oh, he directed Tropic Island?
Yeah, I didn't know he directed Tropic
Island or Tropic
Thunder?
Thunder?
Tropic Thunder. What am I talking about? Tropic Island.
So I know he did. Oh yeah, Escape at Dannemora.
Which one's that one?
It's this. I think it's a Showtime show that people like loved and got a ton of nominations.
He directed it.
He directed it. He directed the whole show.
Dang.
But either way, guys. We're going to keep talking about Noah Baumbach coming up after the break. Make sure you stick around because we're going to be talking about our favorite movies of his, and we're going to be talking about his newest movie. So make sure you stick around. All right, guys, we are back talking about Noah Baumbach films. Let's jump right into the next film we have on our list, and that is 2012 Frances Ha, man.
Yeah.
I feel like this is one that people remember him quite a bit for. I mean, as much as they remember Greta Gerwig. But I mean, I'm sure you have different thoughts on that. Maybe that's just because I think of that as well. But we talked a little bit about it in the beginning. But let's kind of get a little bit more deeper into the story. It is kind of like a girl kind of trying to find her place in the city, in the world. It's set in New York, so it's a very New York type movie as far as like the kind of New York shows and movies we get about people trying to survive in New York City.
Yeah. I mean, it's, one of the influences also, too, was the Magnolia. I'm not Magnolia, Jesus. Manhattan, from Woody Allen. But, yeah, that was definitely one of the inspirations, especially with the black and white, too. That's a big piece of, like, capturing New York youth,
Yeah, and it has a little bit of, obviously, she is at a dance company, and it's kind of the ironic typical New York, like everyone is inside some sort of dance studio kind of thing. At least the vibe I get, because I've never been to New York, but it always feels like every New York thing is always talking about dancing in some sort of way where it's like a huge deal. There was a joke.
New York.
There was a joke I heard the other day talking about how the New York Times always they rather talk about like any other thing. They would just choose dancing, pick up on one topic. But it's like a big deal in New York, apparently. My friend moved out there to do dancing and to do Broadway and to do all that stuff because she was a dancer out here in L.A. And I have a little bit of connection to the dance community because of my brother.
Okay.
I think I've told you that, right?
Oh.
Have I told him?
Thought he was a stunt guy.
He is a stunt guy, stunt/dance.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, the dance stuff is a little bit less than the stunt stuff. I can show you some stuff later, but again, I know a lot of dancers. I guess is what I'm trying to say. I like a ton of dancers, because that's the first thing I met. I was on a shoot, literally like my second day in LA. I was on a shoot in a dance studio. And I just met like a ton of dancers, so I'm friends with them. So I feel I relate to Greta. Is what I'm trying to say. No, not quite. But either way, man, this is
I feel that.
This is a movie trying to find. You're going through her character, and she's trying to find her footing. Did you feel like she got a connection right away with you in this movie? Because that's how I felt personally.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's very relatable to anybody kind of pursuing the creative arts, the kind of struggle of you finding what motivates you, what inspires you, and also while surviving too. I mean, that's a big piece of it too. Like, how can you make money to keep pursuing your art form, and are you willing to give up? Are you willing to bend to get there? So it's definitely a movie that is definitely one of those movies that that touches a lot on that, and I think is one of those movies that emphasize how human. A lot of people think, these hippies, these artists, artistic types, they don't want to do nothing with their lives, they're lazy, all that. And while a lot of that is true for Greta Gerwig's character in this movie, it is also very relatable to the extent that everybody has been to that place and everybody wants to pursue their dreams and do what they love. But reality hits a little harder when it comes to like relationships with your parents, relationships with roommates, particularly with roommates. I mean, I think at the heart of this movie is about friendship between the two main characters, between Fran and Sophia. So I think overall, this movie does a great job of capturing all of that. I think it's stylistically, again, like the black and white helps add to the nostalgia factor of it.
I was going to say, what do you think he chose black and white?
I think, again, like I said, it was inspired by like Manhattan. I'm inspired by like French, new wave stuff. Jean-Luc Godard, Francis Truffaut, like all these old French movies. And particularly like Cleo by the Apartment is one that I think of. That's also a big influence in particular. And I think all of these films have a very humanistic kind of perspective, very minimalist, kind of stylized. It's really just kind of static shots or kind of walking shots or something like that. But very meticulous camera work.
I feel like that's in almost, no, I'm not going to say every black and white movie, but every recent black and white movie feels like that's one of the themes in the movie, right? Whether it be Roma, whether it be Nebraska.
Yeah.
Maybe those are just the two top of my head, but I feel like what you just said, it's very minimalistic in the sense of the camera movement, in the sense of the story, plot movement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think a lot of these films are paying homage to the genres that are inspiring them by going black and white and by using this minimal camera work and by heavy focus on content, heavy focus on dialogue, heavy focus on script. Like you said, I was reading the IMDb trivia for this briefly, and one of the things it said that this, like we were talking about in the first half of the podcast, contrary to thinking like it's a very loose and improvisational dialogue, is actually very tightly written and tightly scripted. But you can see that in the performances that eke out through this film, especially with Greta Gerwig. Like I said, it's kind of a star-making performance. I also think the editing in this movie is very, very well done. I was in an editing class taught by this dude Alex Jablonski, great guy at USC, and he showed us one of the scenes from this movie, the montage from this movie. Like it's a very unconventional type of montage because most montages you expect quick cuts, like quick changes in between time, music under here. The montages in a lot of Noah Baumbach movies are very much just like slices of life. Like, here's a piece of the day. Like, it's not like a quick cut. It's like you spend 30 seconds, you spend like maybe not 30 seconds, but it'll show like 10, 20 seconds of
like a few seconds.
A few seconds of like people, picking up their daughter from the airport and then going home and then eating Thanksgiving dinner and then just being very matter of fact with the time period that changes. It feels quick, but it feels slow at the same time. And I think that goes to invoke like a lot of the sense of memories that we have, because a lot of times when we remember things, in the moment it feels really slow, but when you reflect back on that time, it feels like a really fast time period. It feels like time has just been flying. So I think there's a very intelligent way of communicating that through the editing.
Absolutely. And a lot of it too has to do, like you just mentioned as well, about Greta Gerwig and her. She's just naturally super charming. Yeah. And she's, even throughout this entire movie, that's kind of what stands out the most to me. Right. Is her charm, and that kind of drives the entire movie. But it's interesting because black and white is definitely, like people nowadays say, a choice. It's a choice. Yeah. And it definitely says a lot without saying anything, I guess. So let's move on to While We're Young, RB3.
Yeah, this one. Adam Driver was in Francis Ha. Returns with another collaboration here.
That's right. Shout out to Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
Ben Solo.
Yeah, this is a great movie. It's about older people, older married couple wanting to connect to their youth again. So they're trying to be buddy best friends with this young couple. It's about trying to regain your youth, but at what consequences,
Yeah.
Because we later find out that Adam Driver is kind of more or less like a sleazy guy, and the young people in this movie are just kind of like whatever, which is a pretty negative portrayal of young people, I'd say. But I mean, I don't know. Did you see this one or?
I did see this one. Do you feel like that's a negative portrayal of young people or young people in this? World.
Young people, what do you mean?
Like in this setting.
Oh, and New York, dream chasers. Yeah, I mean, it's very much, because one of the things that this movie explores is that the wife, she's the daughter of this famous documentary filmmaker who's never really named. Yeah. And then Adam Driver's character really is only interested in being friends with these people just so he could get to meet her dad, And that's very much, I do think that's very much a today generation type thing.
Yeah. I'm thinking of a word, RB3.
Clout chasers?
No.
Oh, what?
I'm thinking of another, besides that, what you said, the word hipster comes to mind.
Hipster. Oh, yeah. Oh, they're definitely hipsters. Yeah, 100%.
That's what I'm saying, bro.
Yeah. I mean, they're very hipsterish, very much. This is New York, but they're in LA. They'll be living in Silver Lake and all that jazz.
Hipsters are everywhere, bro.
Yeah.
Don't put them in a box.
Yeah, but
I see hipsters everywhere.
Have you been to Silver Lake though?
No, that's right.
Yeah.
So we're talking about LA, but I gotta say, man, the hipster community in Phoenix.
Yeah,
being from Phoenix.
Yeah.
Woo!
Are they country hipsters?
They're everywhere, bro.
Are they country hipsters?
Not really. They're hipsters.
Oh, damn.
They're full blown, 100% in their blood hipsters. It's real, bro. Wearing the fedoras and everything.
Yeah, the fedoras.
Yeah, the crazy enormous coffee shops that have random shit.
Yeah,
that's real, bro.
Yeah.
When I went back for Christmas, I went to hang out with a friend of mine from high school, and I went inside. She invited me to a coffee. She's like, "Let's meet at this crazy cool coffee shop in downtown Phoenix." Downtown Phoenix. And I went, and I was like, "Yo." With my Star Wars shirt, and I'm just like, everyone in there is wearing a
button
coat
down,
and a surf,
flannel
on top, fedora, rolled up pants, all the halfway through their knees.
They're riding bikes. There's no car. There's no parking lot. It's only
I'm telling you, man.
Rack.
Hipster community in Phoenix is real.
Yeah,
believe the hype.
Yeah.
So I think it's more like instead of young millennials, the perception of millennials is they're hipster.
Yeah.
At least that's the thing I got from Adam Driver's character in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, they're definitely hipsters. I mean, he's also a piece of doo-doo to his girlfriend, too.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we got to give Adam credit more.
Dude,
we got Adam
he's such
Driver
a good actor, man.
Especially for playing the
asshole.
bad boyfriends. Yeah. Because he did that for the first 2 seasons of Girls, I think.
Yeah.
That's the only 2 seasons of that I watched.
Yeah. I only saw a couple episodes, but I remember the Adam Driver episodes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And then this, and I think that's a
Kylo.
Yeah, I mean, is he a bad boyfriend in that?
Yeah.
We have to see.
He low-key is. Yeah.
We've yet to.
I'm sure he will be.
Episode 9, baby, let's go.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not JJ brings it home, but yeah, this movie's interesting to say the least. I wouldn't call one Noah Baumbach's best.
Sure.
But it's another one that deals with aging. That's another one, with Ben Stiller in his last collaboration with Greenberg. It's kind of like both sides of the coin between Greenberg and Francis Han, the young and the old. So
that's exactly it.
I'm with it.
Did you see Mistress America?
Mistress America.
Yeah,
I'm not 100% sure if I've seen that one. Oh, but before I wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
I left. Before I left While We're Young, one thing that also stood out to me about this movie is also in the fact that the father and the father-daughter or father-son relationship in this movie is similar to the father child relationship in a lot of Noah Baumbach's movies. Except with Naomi Watts' character, she has a hard time giving her father recognition for his accomplishments and want to kind of do everything on her own and be independent. That's kind of the connection there. So
absolutely, yeah. It's a theme we see in pretty much all his movies, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, it always has something to do with that.
Right.
But if I'm being honest, I think I've missed this one. It's another Greta Gerwig starring movie.
It's just America. Yeah, I think I've.
It says a lonely college freshman's life is turned upside down by her impetuous, adventurous stepsister to be.
I mean, it looks really good, though. I mean,
yeah, it looks fun.
Yeah. Gotta stop missing these female-centric movies, Ace. What's going on?
Yeah, man. That's great.
And then, of course, I mean, De Palma is...
Let's talk about De Palma.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, this is something that I'm going to reference quite a bit when we actually do a De Palma episode.
Yeah.
Is this documentary.
Yeah, we gotta do a De Palma episode.
Dude, have you seen this documentary?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
yeah.
this is the one I think I saw on Netflix.
Yeah.
This is crazy, bro. It's a crazy.
It's just him being interviewed, talking.
No,
shit.
but it's low key nuts. Like
Yeah.
the stuff he says in this and the movies he's done.
Yeah.
Are crazy.
Yeah.
Like it's
legendary.
It's insane. No, but what I find fascinating about his movies, because he's done so many over the years, is how they have so many themes within the movies, obviously, but the fact that Noah Baumbach is able to kind of tell you generation by generation what what was on De Palma's mind, I guess is what I can say.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just kind of what stood out the most to me.
Yeah, it was a good combination of the interviews. It was a very personal interview. If I'm not mistaken, Noah Baumbach got co-director credit. It was him and the other dude. One dude ran camera, one dude ran sound. So it was really just them in De Palma's living room for 2 days talking to him. So they really got like all the stories out of him. And I think was dope is you get to not only the change in De Palma as a filmmaker, but seeing Hollywood shift and whole.
That's exactly it. It's Hollywood in general.
Yeah.
Because obviously he's from the famous class.
Yeah. The 70s, the film school people, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, and Francis Ford Coppola, and all of them, and Brian De Palma, all of them were doing big movies that really shook up the industry.
And they were all friends.
Yeah.
And they were all
they're all watching each other movies and giving each other critiques
exactly.
and talking to each other.
That's incredibly fascinating. And they basically shaped Hollywood as we know it now. Kind of.
Yeah.
Low key.
With Brian De Palma, he had Carrie. Obviously George Lucas had Star Wars. Francis Ford Coppola had The Godfather. Spielberg, Jaws.
And
Scorsese.
we learn a lot about his relationship with De Niro, which is actually incredibly fascinating.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit off camera about people who always put themselves out there.
Yeah.
De Niro, low-key, was one, dude.
Yeah.
The way that De Palma, I think he says the story, and I might be misquoting it, but the way he said, like, he was the most confident dude I've ever met.
Yeah.
He was just like, yo, put me in your movie.
Yeah.
Like, that was Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Like a young little De Niro. Like, you see him young in this movie, and it's incredibly fascinating to see from, like, that age. He was already being like, I'm a great actor. Put me in there.
Right. I mean, as you should. And what I think speaks greatly about Brian De Palma's like career early on too was that unlike most of his contemporaries, he went to film school. I don't know if he exactly finished or not, but he kind of just jumped right into. He never did a studio type thing. He was always outside of the mainstream. Even going from movies like Blowout, which is one of my favorite personally of his, with John Travolta, Scarface. Even though those are big movies, Wise Guys, they always stood outside of like the mainstream. And I think they have a very stylistic kind of vibe to them as well that I think is really interesting.
Yeah, he's got an incredible career, and a lot of it we'll talk a little bit more when we do the Palma episode, because I actually want to touch on some specific moments in this documentary. But props to Noah for bringing us that documentary, man.
Yeah,
props.
Shut up. Yeah, it's a great film.
Speaking of Netflix, let's finish up with the Meyerowitz stories.
Meyerowitz story, yeah.
What you think of this one, man? This is Adam Sandler's Netflix movie that isn't a ridiculous comedy.
Yeah, it's actually
one
good.
of the Adam Sandler Netflix movies that he's on his deal.
Oh, was this one that was on his deal?
I think so. I might be wrong.
Hey, this is on his deal, man.
Because he's getting. I don't know, man. Because there's a lot of crap on Netflix.
Listen, if it takes 6 bad movies to get to one good one, I'm here for the good one. Dang it. I was one of the only people who put this on the top 10 list, by the way.
That's right. I do remember that.
Yeah. And I still heavily believe in it.
Did you see see it in theaters?
Nah, I saw it on Netflix, yeah. But see, here's the surprise, and that's why I love Netflix, man. It's the surprise of seeing something pop up on Netflix. And just having...
That you actually want to see.
Yeah, I want to see. I was like, no, I didn't even know Noah Baumbach had a new movie coming out. What? Clicked on it, blown away, you know? I didn't even know Ben Stiller was in there or anything. So it was a really, like I said, refreshing movie. It feels really good to have films that kind of speak a different language than boom, boom, action, explosion. You know what I mean? It's very quiet. It's very methodical. Yeah. We talked a lot about the characterization earlier in this movie and like the writing and the dialogue and how it all works out. But I just think overall, I love seeing Netflix produce original stuff. I mean, I'm always going to be a big Netflix defender. This was also the same year they did Okja, which is also on my top 10 list. So they're Netflix. I hope their movies get back to the quality that this is. But The Irishman's coming out this year, so it's a big move.
Very, very curious about this movie. But this is the one you mentioned, talking a little bit about the older people, kind of the fear of aging and the battle with aging that they have. Talk to me a little bit more about that within this movie.
Well, within this movie is Dustin Hoffman's character is like a older professor, and he's being honored, but he doesn't want to be honored because he feels like being honored is like retiring, pretty much, like being put away, like being kind of stored away, And I think a fear of a lot of older people too is when they get old, are their kids going to take care of them or not? And that's something that weighs heavy on Dustin Hoffman's character as well, because he's worried about his children, Ben Stiller being the successful businessman, actually caring about his family and everything. Whereas Adam Sandler's character has always been close to his mom and his pops, but there's a strain in their relationship too when he doesn't feel like as admired and as respected. So it's all these like different layers and complications of like what a family dynamic is actually like. And I'm a big fan of that. I love that.
Yeah,
that's explored here.
And it's the kind of conversations you would have with someone who is in this family. And that's the kind of idea, right? That it's a very grounded world that they live in because of the issues that they deal with within the family. So
yeah,
and a lot of it came from that Nerd Writer video when he talked about how everything kind of related back to the characters, and you felt the subtle like resentment or the subtle anger within small conversations, and talking a little bit more about like their career and what happened to their lives and their success and how people measure success. That's an actual thing that people deal with in America quite a bit, but all over the world. So it's a very relatable topic in that sense, and it's also like a what if scenario, at least for me, RB3, as far as I personally, maybe just because I'm getting older, RB3. Man, 50 is getting close, bro.
No, what are you talking, bro? You're not even halfway to 50, man. Jesus.
But
man.
Either way, like it's the idea of like what happens when I'm older with my relationship with my parents. I don't know if you thought about that, but I have. And the idea of like where are things going to go and what's going to happen. So that's kind of my connection to it. And it's also $150 RB3. It's going up there. I mean, as far as the runtime,
Netflix probably didn't make him cut nothing. So
I was going to say
good for Netflix.
Him.
Yeah, but I love it though.
It's still like really short for me. $150.
Yeah, that's a good length.
That's actually a good length for a movie. Either way, I really want to hear from you guys. What is your favorite Noah Baumbach movie? What is your favorite Noah Baumbach line, moment? Whatever it may be, do you like this director? What is your favorite? You can reach out to us on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Squad Leader Ace.
I'm at RB3, Director RB3.
Yeah, and you can tweet at us. Let us know. Follow us. Give us the likes and the retweets and all that jazz.
Yeah.
And make sure you stick around with this channel. Make sure you stick around on this feed. Give us a review on the iTunes feed. I think that'd be very helpful.
That's big. Yeah.
But either way, guys, let us know in the comments down below if you're on YouTube. Follow us on First Cut.
Yeah, First Cut. Yeah, First Cut on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere you find podcasts. We are at the meaning of podcasts. So.
And make sure you support. This is your last chance to support RB3's movie.
Yeah, this will be the last day. This will be the last day. It's literally the last day today. So if you are watching this and you would like to support Timestamp, we still need that money. Yeah. So go ahead and throw that down.
Last day is usually when people make the most. So make the most, guys, and donate to RB3. Either way, guys, For the Meaning of Podcast, I am Andres.
This is RB3.
And we are peacing out. Peace out, guys.